Welcome to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast, a podcast designed to help you increase your influence, develop your leadership, and maximize your results.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode on the 3 types of thinking that will move you forward. This topic actually is based on a chapter that is in my book, Leadership Gems for Women, 30 Characteristics of Very Successful Women. And if you love this this topic, you can dig more obviously into it if you get the book, and it's one of the chapters in the book. But I wanted to do a podcast episode on it because I think it's powerful. The majority of us today, the majority of people today, don't spend enough time thinking. And it's sad, really, because we find ourselves on autopilot, and autopilot doesn't take you where you want to go most of the time, right? Because if we're not intentionally choosing the direction of our lives, then that means something or someone else is. That's autopilot, right? So it's important for us to stop and be intentional about thinking. And so I wanted to drill down a little bit on the 3 types of thinking that will help you move forward. Now, I understand we're all busy. There's absolutely, none of us have extra days in the week where we can sit around and do absolutely nothing. But in terms of productivity, right, in terms of actual time well invested, thinking probably gives us the greatest return, right? Because here's the thing, activity does not necessarily equal accomplishment in life. And it's very easy to get busy with the busyness of life and doing things and having activity, but it doesn't necessarily move us forward in terms of our goals and our dreams and our priorities. So very important to slow down enough to take in time for intentional thinking. Okay, so the first type of thinking that I really wanted to drill down on is reflective thinking. And this is helpful in terms of growth, particularly in lessons learned over the course of our lives, right? Reflective thinking could happen at the end of the day. It could happen at the end of the week. It could happen certainly at the end of the year, but I think to really benefit from it, this is a natural thing to take into consideration at least once a week, right? And it doesn't have to be a big process. I love to, when I'm out on a walk, that's some of my best thinking time, honestly. And, that's important to note too. When you are setting aside dedicated time to think, it's so helpful to eliminate distractions. So for me, 2 of the best times to actually just think are when I'm driving in the car and when I'm out for a walk, or maybe a very easy run or something like that, right? Sometimes, if I'm just getting my body moving, and then that kind of frees my brain up. I don't have to really think about walking, so that frees my brain up to just think. And driving in the car, for whatever reason, that tends to be very good thought time for me. But there again, perhaps because my body's doing something that I don't have to, really think about a whole lot. I mean, I do want to pay attention driving, but most of the time, if I'm driving on the interstate or a long distance or something like that, it's really good thought time. So it helps if you can eliminate some distractions, but also make sure that you've got something to capture those thoughts, right? If you have a really great idea and you're driving down the road, you can't just jot that down, right? I hope you're not jotting that down if you're driving, but have a place that you can record that, right? Maybe it's telling Siri to make yourself a note, or whatever works for you. But reflective thinking is something that we look back at the end of the day or the end of the week and think about anything that's happened that's impacted us. What are the lessons that we can learn from the experiences that life brought us this week? What did I do well? What responses did I make when this happened that helped me move forward? What served me well in terms of my choices this week? What experiences were painful or difficult? And how did I navigate over them? Because all of us are touched by hardship sooner or later in life. And it's important to remember that these can be growth opportunities. if we are intentional about growing from them. Most of our growth doesn't happen by accident, and reflective thinking is a big part of that. I think we get more growth opportunity when things go wrong in our lives than when things go right. Because I've shared the term with you. If you're familiar with the term post-traumatic stress, that's absolutely true. Things can happen that stress us out, after we go through adversity. It can cause stress and trauma. But I'm also a fan of post-traumatic growth, right? We can grow from that experience. Um, and that's where the value of reflective thinking comes in. As we think about a difficulty, a challenge, or an obstacle, adversity in our lives, and we think, what are the lessons learned here? What can I do differently next time in my life when I'm facing a similar situation? Um, it's not always fun to go back and think about painful chapters in our day or our week or our lives. It's not fun to think about mistakes that we've made, but it absolutely can help us not repeat that mistake. And that can help us in terms of our mindset shift. It's going to affect our future behavior, right? And our behaviors are influencing our circumstances and our results in life. So reflective thinking is critical to help us grow, to help us move forward, to help us reap the benefits of trials and challenges and mistakes. Reflective thinking can also be on something that went well, something that we felt went really good, or we made the right choices, or we handled that right. It's okay to absolutely include those scenarios from your day or your week or whatever in this reflective thinking, but just don't neglect to also look at the hard times, the challenges, the adversities, because they offer just as much or perhaps more opportunity for growth. So the second type of thinking that I wanted to encourage you to think about is, and again, for me, this usually happens about once a week. Once a week is just kind of a natural rhythm in my life where I have some quiet time, usually on a Sunday morning, maybe before I go for a run, or I've got some quiet time in the day. Nobody else is up yet. And think about opportunities, right? So opportunity thinking. And this could be as big as you want it to be, right? Thinking about the opportunities that are coming your way, and think about them most importantly in terms of what you should say yes to and what you should say no to. Because most of the time we're going to find way more opportunities than we can honor. What we find is that when we say no to the good, that allows us the freedom and the energy and the time to focus on the great, saying yes to the great. So one of the things I encourage people to do, especially if I'm coaching, working with a coaching client, what I encourage them to do is sit down with a piece of paper, right? Blank piece of paper and a pen, and just jot down, just brainstorm a couple of minutes, all of the opportunities that are coming your way, everything that's coming your way, and then evaluate them, right? Once you've brainstormed them, once you've brain dumped them and gotten them down on a piece of paper, evaluate them and go, okay, this particular opportunity is helping me move forward toward my goals, toward my dreams. So I'm going to put a big circle around that. And then I look at this opportunity, and this opportunity is not really helping me move forward. So I'm going to I'm going to X that one out. Now, here's the thing. When you look at an opportunity and you're like, this may not be helping me move forward, it might not be something you choose to do, or you might, right? It could be a hobby. It could be something that you just enjoy. It could be recreational. Just because you realize it doesn't serve you in terms of moving forward towards your goals, you might still choose to do it. Just be intentional about that choice and that decision. Why am I saying yes to this opportunity if I know it's not really helping me move forward? Now, there absolutely could be another reason to honor that opportunity. When people ask me for help, I have to evaluate, is that, obviously it's going to take a time and energy commitment, and maybe it's not helping me move forward, but maybe I'm helping someone else move forward. And if that falls in alignment with my purpose, then absolutely I'm going to, embrace that as an opportunity that's helping me move forward. So it does matter about your perspective, right? When you keep that and you look at your opportunities, the things that are going to ask you for time or energy in the upcoming weeks or months, it's okay to think about that from the perspective of, is this in line with my purpose? Is this something I'm gifted at or I'm good at? Or maybe I'm not the best person to tackle this. I remember getting invited to help somebody do fundraising for a local food bank. And that's absolutely something that's a worthy mission, except that it's not my mission. And particularly because it wasn't my community. It was a state that I lived in um, quite a few years ago. And so it's not even my local community at this point. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? Fundraising for the food bank is not a bad thing, but it's not in alignment with my purpose. And it's not the best use of my time. It's still a good thing. It's just not the greatest thing for me. So that's an example of, I would look at that opportunity and I would say, you know what? I need to say no to that opportunity because that's going to give me more time to focus on the things that I need to focus on. And another example of that for me was when I stopped teaching group fitness. And that was hard because I so enjoyed teaching group fitness and I certainly miss it. But there came a season in life when I realized that I could do more of what I felt called to do if I wasn't giving my time and energy to being committed at a gym teaching classes, right? So that's an opportunity. It was a good opportunity. I certainly enjoyed it, but there became a season when I recognized I needed to say no to that opportunity. And so you see where I'm going with this, right? Opportunity thinking is really just considering what's going to help us move forward in terms of our goals. And the last type of thinking that I think is important is that strategic thinking. And this is not just the day-to-day, what opportunities do I need to say yes or no to, but this is the 30,000-foot view. This is where you take a step back and look and you say, you know what, here's where I am in life and I can look around and see that. But this is where you strategically think about, where do I want to go, right? Where do I want to be in a year or 5 years? Who do I want to be in a year or 5 years? Because when it comes to this type of strategic thinking, I'm not talking about getting a strategic plan or organizational plan or a really detailed personal growth plan. I mean, those things can be helpful and they have a place in strategic thinking. But when I say strategic thinking, I really mean take the 30,000-foot view of your life and your direction. Because once you know where you are and where you want to go, then throughout your day, what all you really have to be conscious of is asking yourself, is what I'm about to do going to move me closer toward that goal? Is this thing that I'm about to do going to move me closer to that direction? And if the answer is no, then I really need to evaluate why I would do it, right? That strategic thinking is the big picture, 30,000-foot view of where do I want to be? What direction am I headed in? Who do I want to be as a person? Because I think if you are intentional about choosing that, the rest of it will become very easy, right? If I know who I want to be as a person, then I'm going to start to align my behaviors like that. I'm going to start to align my thoughts like that, my habits, my choices, and then I'm going to start to get the results that that person would get. So there again, it's just a different level of intentionality to sit down. Now and you could do this process in probably less time than it's taken me to talk through this process on this podcast, right? It doesn't have, you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours on each type of thinking. You could just spend a few minutes once a week. And it always never ceases to amaze me because I'm one of those people that I tend to have a bias toward action. I tend to be just naturally more engaged with action. I like to be doing things and crossing things off, and I like to be accomplishing things and achieving things. I mean, that's just part of my natural makeup, if you will. And so I'm one of those people that when I sit down to think, the first thing that I start to think about is all of the things I could be doing while I'm sitting here thinking. So I have to fight off that tendency and go, no, let me leverage the most important organ in my body, right? My brain. Let me use this tool. But it's funny how that process does not come naturally to me. And so I really have to just sit down and be intentional about, no, I'm not going to read. I'm not going to check social media. I'm just going to sit down and think for a few minutes. But it doesn't take long. Once I get past the thinking about all the stuff I could be doing, it doesn't take very long at all for me to get an idea that I'm like, why have I never thought about that before? Now, I probably could have thought about that a year ago if I'd have been more intentional about thinking, right? Who knows? But that's why it's so important for us to be intentional about this thinking, right? Thinking is what moves us forward. Thinking is what helps us get from point A to point B and how we want to get there. Because there again, if we're just on autopilot, if we're not intentional about choosing the direction for our lives, that means someone or something else is. And I know you want you want more than that for yourself, or you wouldn't be listening to a personal growth and leadership podcast. You are interested in growing and developing towards your potential. You are interested in increasing your influence and maximizing your results. That's why you're listening to this podcast. Right. So I would just encourage you to build some time into your week. Maybe you can't commit to it regularly every week yet, but like anything, the more intentional we are about doing it, the easier it will become and the better it will serve us over the long run. Until next time.